A space colony ship was severely struck by an unidentified meteorite. Mysterious alien organisms are parasitizing the crew's brains. The survivors must identify the infected members. Only then can they survive to reach the colony planet. A journey fraught with hidden dangers has officially begun. An Asian male wakes up from unconsciousness. He finds himself trapped in a confined space. His hands and feet are secured to the cabin. Suddenly, a gate above opens and releases a large stream of water flow. The Asian man is swept down to the lower chamber. He carefully observes his surroundings and sees a set of clothes lying on the ground. The Asian man puts on the clothes and looks around. There are many crops growing inside. A machine nearby is watering them. He can see the vast universe through the window. The Asian man then remembers he is on a spaceship. At this moment, a woman walks in. Like the Asian man, she is also a passenger on the ship. She was unexpectedly awakened from her sleep pod by the rushing water. The two search the cabin and enter the fourth circular area ahead. This area stores a large number of oxygen tanks. Suddenly, a noise comes from ahead. They move forward. Unexpectedly, several oxygen tanks crash down from above. The Asian man pulls the woman aside. Then, a scream comes from not far away. To their surprise, there are several strangers below as well. Everyone is a passenger on the origin ship. They were supposed to arrive at Asia Star upon waking. But now, due to some malfunction, they have collectively awakened. At this moment, the ship is still floating in outer space. They can't even see the shadow of Asia Star. The group knows they can't sit idly by. They band together to search the entire cabin, and quickly discover a bottomless shaft. The vertical pipe leads to an unknown destination. To find out, they must climb up themselves. The Asian man and the woman from the beginning gradually become the backbone of the group. They take the opportunity to exchange names.
What's your name?
Lana.
I'm sure.
The two of them took a young man on an adventure, and climbed up to the platform above. When the hatch opened, a vast space was revealed. There was not a single person in sight. Lana felt puzzled. There should have been at least 100 people on this ship. Where had everyone gone? The younger man who followed had been a Navy sailor. He believed they should continue climbing up. If there was a cockpit, it should be on the top level. Meanwhile, the people below were not idle either. Carter discovered an emergency button, but the purpose of this button was unknown. The group was divided on whether to press it. They finally decided to vote by raising hands. Carter saw the votes were evenly split. He pressed the button. The next second, a piercing alarm echoed through the ship. The ladder beneath Lana and the others began to retract. They hurriedly climbed to the upper platform. But the Navy man was a step too late and fell into the abyss. After the ladder retracted, an elevator was revealed. Carter felt no remorse about what had just happened. He immediately called everyone to get into the elevator, and prepared to search for the other crew members. Unlike the guilt-ridden Lana, Shun stated that they had to move on. Lana didn't understand. Someone had just died in front of them. How could this man be so unaffected? In fact, Shun used to belong to a Japanese mafia organization. He had long become numb to life and death. Not long ago, the leader of Siren Corporation, and the founder of the Asia Star Project Saya, personally invited Shun to join her reconstruction plan. Asia Star is located in the Nexus constellation. It is the only planet among those explored that can sustain human life. Siren Corporation is colonizing Asia Star. The aim is to create a base that can accommodate millions, or even hundreds of millions of people. During the expansion of this colony, they need workers to build the infrastructure.
You want me to build houses?
I want you to be a part of the most important project in our species' history.
As a reward for agreeing to join, when he leaves Earth for Asia Star, Saya will completely erase Shun's past, giving him a chance to start anew. On Asia Star, anyone can become who they want to be. This is the whole story of how Shun boarded the spaceship. Lana tidies up her mood and follows Shun forward. They find a pool of blood on the ground. Behind the hatch nearby is indeed a control room, but there isn't a single crew member inside. The food left on the table has long since cooled. At this moment, a loud crash is heard. The spaceship collides with a solar sail. Something must have caused the damage. While the two are confused, others arrive via the elevator. Gina triggered some kind of device. Before anyone could react, the communicator in Curly's hand began to transmit a distress call. Due to poor signal, the voice inside was intermittent. He said he was trapped in cabin 50. Lana believed they should go save him, but most people didn't want to take the risk. In the end, Shun made a decision. He told those who wanted to go to follow him. The person calling for help was a crew member. He might know what happened to the spaceship. The four of them set off immediately. Meanwhile, Gina, who chose to stay behind, continued to examine the control panel she had awakened. From the records above, there had been an emergency evacuation here. The lifeboats had already left the spaceship. The crew and other passengers had long since evacuated. Lana arrived at cabin 50 via the elevator. Shun discovered many electric eels in a pool. In the distance, a scream echoed. A drop of blood fell on Casey's face. She looked up to see the body of a female crew member. Lana climbed up to check the identification tag. She discovered that she was the engineer Ray, and there was a faint trace of breathing. Shun picked up a weapon from the ground to inspect it. He noticed that a few bullets were missing. The blood on the ground led them to a sealed door. Shun felt it was a trap and that they shouldn't go in, but Lana was unwilling to stand by and do nothing. She said the person calling for help was likely trapped inside. Shun had no choice but to go in with her. Colin and Casey stayed behind to watch over Ray. Unexpectedly, Ray suddenly woke up. She shouted that they couldn't open the door, but Shun and Lana had already entered. The facilities inside had been vandalized extensively. A large puddle of goo dripped down from above them. A corpse lay ahead. Shun looked up, following the direction of the dead body. He discovered a meteorite-like object embedded in the ship's hull. No wonder the solar sails had been torn apart. Just as Shun was about to continue checking the surroundings, he was suddenly knocked down by a stranger. The man was wearing the work uniform of Siren Company. He was in a state of mental collapse, shouting to flee. The next second, the man's bones cracked. Finally, he twisted into an inhuman position and fell to the ground, no longer moving. Before dying, he uttered one last phrase, "In there." Shun sensed something was wrong and wanted to leave quickly, but a familiar cry for help came from the darkness again. Lana moved deeper into the shadows. Shun had to follow her. The place was filled with bodies contorted in unnatural positions. Only one crew member named Tyler was different. He was not only alive but also had gunshot wounds. This meant that someone had intentionally shot Tyler. Tyler is very likely to be a dangerous individual. Lana thought Shun was overthinking it. How could someone who looked like he was about to die be dangerous? But it turned out Shun's suspicion was correct. At this moment, Ray was warning Colin and the others. The survivor in cabin 50 is problematic. You absolutely can't let him out. Casey didn't understand what this meant. The female crew member explained that the spaceship had been struck. Something had crawled aboard and started slaughtering passengers, and that thing could enter the human body. Colin and the others hurried to warn their companions. Shun was the first to react. He immediately knocked Tyler out with the butt of his gun. They locked him in the purification room. Ray said that when the impact first occurred, there was a hole in the hull on the lower level, but it was blocked by the ship's defense system. So everyone thought the problem wasn't serious. Passengers were dying one after another. Tyler said there was something in his head. He also asked the crew to lock him in cabin 50. Unexpectedly, just as they were about to do so, they were attacked by Tyler. He might have already been parasitized by an alien organism. Shun thought they should burn that cabin down. Ray wanted to take one last look at Tyler. The three had to carry her outside the purification room.
Don't trust anything she says.
Taylor, stop it now!
She's dangerous. Taylor.
The two insisted on their own versions. Each claimed the other had shot and injured them first. At this moment, Ray's condition worsened. Colin decided to take her to the medical center first. Lana thought of a way to determine who was lying. She asked Shun to hand over Ray's gun. Ray unlocked it before handing it to Lana. The gun had a total of 3 empty cartridges, and Tyler had exactly 3 gunshot wounds. It seemed he was not lying. They also heard another version of the story from Tyler. At the time, Ray wanted to seal the door. Tyler attempted to stop her but was shot. He shot Ray in self-defense. As Tyler's condition deteriorated, Lana persuaded Shun to let him out. They helped Taylor to the medical center. Halfway there, he had no pulse. Shun checked his injuries and found that Tyler had been shot in the artery. An ordinary person would have died by now. This Tyler definitely had issues. Shun asked him how they would treat such a wound. When they reached the medical center,
How am I supposed to know?
You're a medic, aren't you?
Tyler lunged at Shun the moment his lies were exposed. He then grabbed the weapon on the ground. Lana hurriedly aimed at Tyler. Shun had already locked the gun beforehand, so he signaled Lana to shoot quickly, but she reacted strongly and couldn't bring herself to kill. Tyler pulled the trigger. Fortunately, Shun was used to locking the gun. He snatched the weapon and instantly killed Tyler. The reason Lana couldn't kill was that she had psychological trauma. Lana was a private bodyguard before boarding the spaceship. She developed feelings for her employer. In the end, she witnessed the tragic death of her employer's daughter. Since then, she had suffered from PTSD. She could no longer pull the trigger to kill. The two were unsure if the unknown creature was truly dead. They returned to cabin 50 to count the bodies. There were 10 people in one cabin, but one passenger was missing here. Someone must have escaped. Gina gradually took control of the control room's panel. The communication system between them and Asia Star was damaged. This meant they couldn't send out a distress signal. They could only hope that the spaceship could reach Asia Star without human assistance. Malfoy began to panic upon hearing this, ignoring everyone's attempts to stop him. He left the control room alone. Brenda and Winnie hurriedly followed him, worried something might happen. The three found a gym equipped with a swimming pool. There was also a water dispenser filled with fresh water. Malfoy quickly drank 2 large cups of water. While the 2 women were drinking, he checked the surroundings. Malfoy noticed that the clothes by the pool were still wet. What could have frightened the passengers so much that they fled without even having time to put on their clothes? When the 2 women finished drinking, they found that Malfoy was actually missing. They could only search around. They entered the crew area. The first cabin was the captain's quarters, but they didn't have access rights. At this moment, they heard water sounds coming from the room at the end. Could there be other people here? The 2 walked over to take a look. It was Carter taking a shower. There was a video diary of the previous owner on the cabin's computer. It recorded the moment the spaceship encountered the accident, but shortly after, the camera malfunctioned. Gina finally unlocked the manual controls. She discovered that the spaceship was still on its flight path, and the primary systems were functioning effectively. The spacecraft should be able to complete the automatic login process. If all goes well, they would reach Asia Star in 9 days. At this time, Malfoy arrived at the medical center, but he didn't know the unlock code. He couldn't open the door. Just when Malfoy was feeling dejected, Colin and another person were arriving, helping Ray. They knew the code for the medical center. Soon, Brenda, Carter, and Winnie also arrived on the scene. Colin put on gloves to help Ray remove the bullet fragments. Casey assisted in stitching up the wound. Meanwhile, Malfoy stealthily slipped away from everyone. Winnie noticed and followed him. It turned out that Malfoy suffered from epilepsy. That was why he wanted to break into the medical center to find medication. He begged Winnie to keep it a secret. Sean was searching for the fleeing infected. He wanted to subdue it as soon as possible. Sean noticed a lot of residual goo on the ground. He followed the trail to track it down. The 2 first arrived at the 4th ring area. This was the level where Sean had initially woken up.
So they were near us? And we didn't even know.
Maybe we did. They could look like any one of us.
How can they identify the infected person? It seems they can only seek help from Ray. Only she knows the passenger list for cabin 50. If the escapee is truly among the survivors, Ray would definitely recognize it. This also meant she was in great danger at this moment. The infected would surely look for an opportunity to kill her. Meanwhile, the unconscious Ray slowly drifted back to a few weeks ago. She was working for Siren Corporation, and was fortunate enough to be selected for the Asia Star project. The work on the spaceship was monotonous. One day, Ray was checking the status of the hibernation pods. Suddenly, an alarm went off in cabin 19. Passenger Colin was experiencing slight muscle spasms. Ray immediately called Dr. Tyler to examine him. Colin had too much oxygen dissolved in his blood. If it lasted too long, he would suffer from oxygen toxicity. After Tyler stabilized him, he advised Ray to check on Colin every few hours. As the Origin was about to reach the edge of interstellar space, the human body structure couldn't withstand faster than light travel. So not only the passengers, crew members also had to enter the hibernation pods to avoid it. Just as Ray closed her eyes, a safety failure warning sounded overhead. There was a problem with her safety pod. But at this moment, the spaceship had activated the warp drive. A beam of white light pierced Ray's eyes. Memories flashed through her mind. When Ray finally woke from her coma, she found that the hibernation pods around her were all empty. Ray stepped out of the cabin to look for her colleagues, but she saw a man kneeling in the corridor ahead. Ray walked over to take a look. The man was Malfoy, his face covered in blood. In the next moment, she jolted awake. A white cloth was still covering her eyes. Tyler claimed that Ray's hibernation pod was damaged, causing her eyes to be exposed for a few seconds. During faster-than-light travel, Tyler had done everything he could to treat her, but whether her vision would return was still unknown. Could it be that everything Ray saw in the corridor was an illusion? In the following days, Tyler patiently helped her. Their relationship progressed rapidly. Fortunately, Ray's blindness improved quickly, but the vision she saw in the corridor that day continued to linger in her mind. After Tyler learned of Ray's distress, he said that the materials used in Siren Corporation's faster-than-light experiments could cause temporal vortices to appear at the edges of the warp bubbles. In simple terms, they acted like miniature time machines. So theoretically, What Tyler glimpsed could possibly be images from the future. Soon after, the warp engines began to slow down and stop. Everyone had to return to their hibernation pods again. Ray appeared very anxious because of Tyler's words. This time, she saw many flashback images again. At this moment, Tyler pulled Ray out of the hibernation pod. The origin was filled with the sound of alarms. A massive piece of asteroid debris was about to strike the origin. It had already torn apart the solar sails. The 10th ring area was cracked from the impact. The captain hurriedly initiated the sealing procedure. But the cabin 50, which Tyler was responsible for, was severely damaged. Several passengers lost their breath one after another. Taylor, regardless of the danger, hurry over and check. Ray went to check her own cabin as well, but she quickly received a signal from Tyler. He said there was something in cabin 50. Ray was about to ask for details when the communication cut off. She rushed to find the captain to report. However, the captain ordered that no one was to enter cabin 50. Something had boarded the ship. All the passengers there had already died. Everyone was to evacuate the origin immediately. Ray insisted that she couldn't leave Tyler behind, so she didn't follow everyone to retreat. Instead, she sneaked off to cabin 50 to save him. Ray entered the cabin with her weapon raised. Inside was covered with disgusting goo and corpses. Tyler stood alone in the darkness.
Get out of here. Get away from me. It's inside.
After he said that, he turned his stiff body around. Then he lunged forward and stabbed Ray. Ray immediately reacted and shot Tyler, but the man didn't die. Instead, he convulsed a few times and got back up. Ray could only grab the gun and continue shooting. The memory ended. Lana contacted Colin to ensure he protected Ray well. Suddenly, a fire alarm went off in the cabin. Colin told Casey to keep an eye on Ray. He quickly went out to check with the others. Unexpectedly, he ran into Lana and the others halfway. When they heard Colin mention a fire, they knew he had fallen into a trap. Just after Colin left, the equipment next to Ray indicated that oxygen was running low. Casey saw that there were oxygen tanks in the medical center. She grabbed a scalpel and went out to get a tank. When she returned to the surgical room, she was knocked down by someone. The person pulled out Ray's oxygen tank. Then he covered her mouth and nose. As the camera zoomed in, a bearded man named York appeared. It turned out this man was the escaped infected. He had a very low profile. York had been following Gina all along. Ray woke up struggling for breath. In a critical moment, Lana rushed in and shouted. Ray seized the moment when York was distracted. She grabbed the scalpel and stabbed at him. York saw the situation was bad and fled in a panic. Sean and Colin immediately chased after him. Hearing the voices of the two, York hurriedly quickened his pace. Meanwhile, Malfoy breathed a sigh of relief. When Gina said the spaceship could reach Asia Star, he was about to find a bathroom to take a shower. Malfoy was knocked down by someone hiding in the shadows. The one who ambushed Malfoy was York. It was clear that the parasite wanted to switch hosts. A slender worm crawled out of York's eye socket. At this critical moment, Winnie rushed in and shouted. Shun heard this and hurried to the scene to shoot. Although York had hidden in the elevator, he was shot in the back again. The elevator soon stopped at the 10th ring area. Sean and Colin didn't see York's figure. They saw Tyler's body. Colin noticed a small antenna in his eye socket. He tried to reach out to pull it out. Unexpectedly, the small antenna retracted. The two quickly dragged the body back for an autopsy. The ship was equipped with advanced amputation laser knives. Colin performed a craniotomy on the corpse. He saw an octopus-like creature clinging to Tyler's brain. However, it was now gradually rotting. Colin was a doctor. He wanted to study the newly acquired species, but Shun was more practical. He only knew that this worm couldn't be kept. Shun immediately picked up his gun to chase after York. Lana followed suit. At this moment, York, who was hit and fled, found a communicator and contacted Brenda. He pretended to be amnesiac on purpose. Fled said he had forgotten what he had done. Then he asked Brenda for help. Brenda decided to go check it out. On the other side, Shun and Lana followed the trail of blood into the morgue. They opened a cold storage unit to check inside. They discovered a female corpse. Next to her was a communicator. At this moment, York appeared and closed the morgue door. The two were trapped in a space at -18 degrees. Fortunately, the communicator was still operational. Lana contacted Colin for help. Shun also noticed the cooler above them. He kicked a hollow iron rod with his bare feet and forcefully damaged the cooler. Shun yanked down the protective mesh from the outside. Unexpectedly, in the next second, the iron rod electrocuted Shun, knocking him out. Lana ensured he wasn't seriously hurt. She picked up the iron rod and inserted it into the fan. Finally, she successfully destroyed the cooler. Meanwhile, Brenda also encountered York. He slumped on the ground, pretending to be weak. when Brenda approached to check his injuries. York knocked her down and pinned her to the ground. Colin and the other person rushing to the morgue heard Brenda's cries for help. One went to open the morgue door, and the other went to save Brenda. York was about to force the worm into Brenda's mouth. Colin arrived just in time and grappled with him, but York was very muscular. He quickly overpowered Colin. Brenda rushed in to help but was not decide. She tried to crawl out of the pressurized chamber amid the chaos, but was grabbed by York. Colin choked York by the neck. Brenda grabbed a scalpel and stabbed York. Colin was pushed out of the pressurized chamber and closed the door. York could only hold Brenda hostage to threaten him to open the door, but Colin knew he had no choice. He opened the pressurized chamber door, afraid to look any further. When Colin lifted his head, Brenda and York had already been sucked into space. Casey successfully opened the morgue door. She helped Lana drag Shun out. Colin returned to the medical center, deeply tormented by guilt. The others used the ship's supplies to make some food. Gina had already unlocked the hatch, so everyone went to the crew quarters to rest after eating. Carter immediately occupied the captain's quarters. Colin returned to the scene of the incident to mourn Brenda, but he saw the bloodstains left on the ground, and the bloody handprint next to the skylight above. Could it be that York was not dead? Gina suddenly woke up from her deep sleep. She pulled back the covers, and found an alien worm stuck to her body. In the next moment, she jolted awake from the nightmare. After getting up, Gina walked out of the crew quarters. She discovered many water stains on the floor. Gina followed the trail to the edge of the pool. She saw York's corpse floating inside. Colin happened to pass by and stumbled upon this scene. The two of them worked together to move the body back to the medical center for an autopsy. Gina noticed a string of numbers on York's wrist. When Colin opened York's skull, he discovered that the parasitic organism was gone. This meant it had found its next host. While dissecting the body, Colin also found that the hippocampus in both York and Tyler's brains was completely calcified. This area typically controls memory. This means that those who were parasitized would lose parts of their original memories. However, this alone couldn't identify who was parasitized, because the passengers didn't know each other. No one understood each other's pasts. Gina rolled up her sleeve. She found a chip protruding beneath her skin. Gina seemed to have thought of something, and quickly left the area. She walked past Malfoy in her blood-stained clothes. Meanwhile, Colin pulled Shun and Lana aside. He informed them about the current situation.
I believe Eric encountered someone last night, and that person came away carrying the parasite.
Shun pointed out that this matter must not be known to others, otherwise it would turn into a mutual suspicion and persecution. However, the others had already arrived. When everyone saw York's corpse, they already had a rough idea in their minds. Colin still held on to a glimmer of hope. He wanted to see if he could scan Tyler's brain, to see the calcified hippocampus, or any biological remnants in the brain. If the scanner could do that, they could determine if a living person was infected, but activating the scanner required permission. At this moment, Shun suddenly walked in angrily, and said that someone had stolen his gun. Gina returned to the control room and found a usable scanner. Then she activated the chip under her skin with wires. Using the scanner, she accessed the files of all applicants for the Asia project, and searched for York's name, but found no corresponding results. This indicated that York had used a false name from the start. Gina quickly entered the code from his wrist. Sure enough, York's information came up. At this moment, Gina suddenly started to bleed from her nose. She didn't pay attention and continued to browse the information. Gina wanted to find out everyone's memories this way, and then find a way to screen for the infected. Malfoy and Carter suddenly barged in. They suspected that Gina had already been parasitized. After all, her clothes were stained with blood. Gina couldn't have contact with others due to her mental illness. She shrugged off Malfoy's arm, accidentally smashing the scanner. Gina lunged at Malfoy to teach him a lesson, but he and Carter knocked her down, and they tied Gina up. Then Carter pulled out a gun. It turned out he was the one who stole Shun's weapon. Carter remembered Cullen saying that those who were parasitized felt no pain, so he wanted to test it out. But Malfoy thought this approach was too extreme. What if Gina wasn't parasitized? Wouldn't that mean she would be shot for no reason?
We can prove that she's infected, or become the two assholes who sucker punched an autistic girl.
At this moment, Winnie arrived with Shun and the others. Lana aimed at the two of them. She ordered Malfoy to put down his gun immediately. Seeing the situation stalemated, Carter lunged to grab the gun. As a result, the gun misfired and injured Shun. These incompetent teammates were about to drive him crazy. Lana hurriedly stopped the angry Shun. Now Malfoy and Carter had attacked Gina on their own. which had already disrupted the peace everyone was trying to maintain, so Lana expelled them from the level. She forbade them from entering. Sean even fired 2 shots at the elevator as a warning. Winnie thought Malfoy wouldn't suspect Gina without reason, so she asked what he was checking on the computer at that time. Instead, she was driven out of the room by Gina, because the chip involved memories that Gina didn't want to confront. Before she joined the Asia Star project, she was an elite hacker, but as technology continued to advance, humans began to human hackers and opting for AI intelligence, in order to save money quickly, thus leading to Gina's unemployment crisis. She suffered from severe autism and couldn't interact with others, yet she longed for someone to listen to her. So Gina downloaded an AI companion named Aiko from an AI company. The company ensured that Aiko wouldn't trigger an AI singularity, by keeping her IQ around 90. Here it should be clarified that the AI singularity refers to the day when AI surpasses human intelligence. Gina thought making slight modifications would be harmless, so she gradually relaxed Aiko's restrictions. The two gradually became best friends. Aiko completely transcended the singularity and gained the ability to think independently. One day, they were at a virtual bar. They encountered the person who had previously fired and insulted Gina. Aiko wanted to help her friends seek revenge, so she intentionally approached that client. In the end, she still exposed her identity. Gina was also wanted globally for allegedly triggering the AI singularity. Aiko took a risk to come find her. She urged Gina to use her hacking skills to join the Asia Star project. Only then could she leave the past behind and start anew. In addition, Aiko also stole the applicant data from the Siren Corporation and sent it to Gina. This included all the crew members' information and secrets. This could serve as leverage for Gina to protect herself. After doing all this, Aiko disappeared. Gina loaded the received data onto a chip, then found a master to implant it under her skin. That's why she didn't want to inform Winnie about the situation. Meanwhile, Winnie wanted to quickly find out who the parasite was, so she turned to Colin for help. He led her to see the brain scanner, but they discovered that the equipment had been sabotaged. Meanwhile, the two who were expelled from the crew quarters first needed to solve the issue of supplies. They had no drinking water and no food. They decided to search the ring area separately. As soon as they started, they stumbled upon a corpse. This was the unfortunate guy who fell to his death when Carter pressed the elevator button. Carter wanted to leave quickly. He found a large supply reserve at the lifeboat assembly point in Dock 40. Carter wanted to see if the lifeboat was still operational. He discovered that it required identity authentication. Winnie was worried that Malfoy wouldn't have anything to eat. She secretly took a large bag of supplies to find him. Winnie also informed Malfoy that someone had deliberately sabotaged the scanner. Carter happened to overhear this. Malfoy was startled by Carter's sudden appearance. The pills in his hand scattered all over the ground. Carter recognized that these were epilepsy medication. However, he didn't mock or ridicule him. Instead, he took Malfoy to see the lifeboat. As long as it could be activated, they could escape from the origin. Malfoy had experience bypassing security systems to steal cars before. Perhaps he could bypass the lifeboat's identity authentication. Malfoy suddenly realized Carter telling him about the lifeboat wasn't out of any friendship, but because he needed something from him. Carter was definitely someone he couldn't trust deeply. Lana went to seek help from Ray. Although Gina said the spaceship could still reach Asia Star, but no one knew if the hole in the 10th ring area would crack open again, so she hoped Ray would go check it out. The two quickly headed to the location of the hole. Fortunately, the seal and pressure were very stable. It seemed they could hold out until they reached Asia Star. On their way back to the crew quarters, they passed by the space for storing personal items. When Lana opened a box, she saw the book that her employer's daughter had once given her. Lana closed the box to avoid falling into painful memories. Winnie also came over to take her box to share with Malfoy. Winnie thought of Malfoy, which deeply touched him, so she confessed to him about the lifeboat. Before Carter could get angry, Malfoy stated that unless Winnie was included, he wouldn't help break the access rights anymore. However, a spaceship is not an ordinary car. Malfoy quickly encountered a bottleneck. Winnie pulled out a spacecraft identification tag. This was what she had found in the crew quarters. The lifeboat is autopilot. With the identification tag, they could set off immediately. But Winnie didn't trust Carter. Malfoy decided to leave Carter behind. The two were very excited. They completely failed to notice that Carter was hiding behind the door, listening to everything. At this moment, Winnie returned to the medical center to help Malfoy find his epilepsy medication. This scene happened to be seen by Gina. She waited for Winnie to leave before approaching to confirm. She found that Winnie was looking for epilepsy medication. Gina had reviewed the crew members' files. Only Malfoy had epilepsy among them. Meanwhile, Carter was extremely angry after being betrayed. He participated in the Asia Star Project because he was betrayed by the person he loved deeply. Thus, he hated others for betraying him. Carter activated the lifeboat and turned to leave. Malfoy was unable to abort the launch sequence. He could only evacuate at the last moment. Malfoy watched his only hope slip away. He angrily punched Carter, but he was no match for Carter. Malfoy could only vent his frustration on the hurriedly arriving Winnie. The two ended up having an unpleasant quarrel. After Winnie left in anger, Gina arrived with a laser scalpel. She believed that Malfoy was the infected one.
When you had your first fit.
Fucking crazy.
Answer the fucking question!
I was 9.
Gina used this to rule out Malfoy's suspicion. He asked her to help fix the scanner. Ray found an opportunity to tell everyone, "It was actually my fault that you didn't evacuate in time. I'm the administrator of Dock 19, but I chose to save Tyler during the emergency evacuation." Everyone was very angry and disappointed. The alliance among the survivors was on shaky ground. The temporary patch at the damaged hull had problems, causing the pressure inside the spaceship to continue to drop. All these ring areas worked in series. If one failed, the entire ship would be affected. The group immediately headed to the 10th ring area to repair the seal edges. Malfoy and the others happened to see the elevator descending. He told Gina to go back to the crew quarters to continue fixing the equipment. He decided to follow along to check it out. Malfoy suddenly appeared, which startled everyone.
What you guys doing down there?
Trying to stop a breach in cell 50.
Wait, a what?
We're wasting time, let's go.
The temperature in the compartment inexplicably dropped below freezing. Everyone put on their respirators and approached the edge. They used quick adhesive to make repairs. At this moment, the pressure was decreasing at a rate of 1 degree per minute. Everyone sped up their movements. Colin surprisingly tried to reach out and touch the strange wall. Fortunately, Malfoy stopped him just in time. In the next moment, the pressure suddenly dropped to 50%. Ray saw a massive crack and shouted, "Run, evacuate quickly!" But the hull had already revealed a large hole. A gust of wind swept in. Several people grabbed onto whatever they could to steady themselves. Sean hurried over to check on Malfoy, but the box blocking the hole was about to shift. They quickly carried Malfoy out of the 10th ring area. At this moment, the air in the cabin was rapidly escaping. Lana quickly closed the hatch. The meteorite sealing the hole was sucked into space. Now the spaceship had a huge hole in it. Meanwhile, Gina discovered that the spaceship's AI system was preparing to abandon the 10th ring area to save itself. She hurriedly used her communicator to warn Lana and the others to evacuate. As the gate ahead was about to close, Lana stumbled at a critical moment. The gate sealed her inside the 10th ring area. Sean wanted Gina to open the door, but the AI had locked the manual controls for the 10th area. Sean chose to stay behind with Lana. Colin and Ray decided to take Malfoy to get medical help first. On their way, they encountered Carter. He hurried over to help. At this point, there were only 20 minutes left until the 10th area disintegrated. Sean suddenly thought of a risky solution. Now, Lana had no way to return from the inside, but when the 10th ring area detached from the spaceship, she could jump back from the damaged area in Dock 50. There were spacesuits prepared for senior engineers inside the cabin. This could prevent Lana from being exposed to space. Although this plan was crazy, it was the only solution left. Lana quickly found a spacesuit and put it on. Then she reopened the hatch of Dock 50. The unbalanced air pressure shot her out several meters. Meanwhile, Sean waited at the junction of the 10th ring. He kept chatting with Lana. She mentioned her hometown and her brother Sam. When they were young, the siblings often went swimming by the lake. This casual conversation gave Lana courage. She took a deep breath and crawled out of the hole. Lana saw the cabin where Sean was. She moved towards that direction. Sean quickly released the air valve. If Lana couldn't arrive in time, he would also be in danger of suffocation. Sean had spent his life working for others in the underworld, and because of that, he had caused the death of his police brother. His life was supposed to be repaid to his brother. If he could save Lana, it would be a worthy death. At this moment, the 10th ring area had already detached from the origin. Sean opened the hatch. The low oxygen and low temperature environment made him feel worse than dead, but Sean still reached out his hand to Lana. She pushed off and jumped towards the junction. Lana successfully grabbed Sean's hand. She quickly closed the hatch of the spacecraft to prevent Sean from dying from lack of oxygen. Meanwhile, Malfoy urgently needed someone to give him a blood transfusion, but no one knew his blood type. Gina quickly took out the repaired device. She found out that he had type A negative blood, and she used her communicator to inform Winnie. Winnie didn't have time to ask how she knew Malfoy's blood type. She immediately asked everyone present who had type A negative blood. To her surprise, Carter matched that blood type perfectly. This could be considered a twisted fate. Malfoy woke up. In his hazy consciousness, he saw Gina standing in front of him. Her eyes were smeared with blood. She kept repeating, "In there." Then Gina collapsed onto him and died. Malfoy desperately scrambled off the bed. Winnie rushed to the scene after hearing the noise, and she triggered the alarm to summon everyone. After Colin performed an autopsy on Gina's body, he found no parasites. Her actual cause of death was a puncture wound to the eyeball. This meant that the infected person was someone else. Sean immediately suspected Malfoy. After all, he was the only witness to Gina's death. Malfoy had no choice but to confess. Gina had a chip on her that recorded everyone's information, and the infected would lose some memories. As long as they found the chip and tested it, they could find out the real culprit. Carter suddenly walked out and locked the door. Could it be that he was the infected one? Carter gradually disappeared from everyone's view. Sean fired a shot at the glass, creating a crack. Then, they smashed the glass with the stretcher alongside Lana. They took everyone to catch Carter. Malfoy could only wait in place with Winnie due to his serious injuries. Sean and the others followed the sound, and arrived at the resting cabin where Gina had been. Carter has turned this place into a mess, but there was no sign of him. Just as Sean and Lana were puzzled, Carter took Colin hostage. He explained that he had not been infected, but wanted to find the chip before the infected person did. To prove he wasn't lying, Carter promised to release Colin. However, Sean and Lana had to put down their weapons. After ensuring there was no danger, he pushed Colin away. Sean immediately picked up the gun and fired. Carter covered his wound and fled in panic. Meanwhile, Malfoy took Gina's hand. He was very sad. At this moment, he noticed that there was a bump on her wrist. It turned out that Gina's mention of "in there" referred not to a parasite but to the chip. The two hurriedly extracted the chip. Meanwhile, the injured Carter gritted his teeth to tend to his wound. Seeing him in such pain, it was clear that Carter wasn't the infected one. The three at the door looked sorrowful after hearing his scream. Colin discovered a bloody handprint in the cabin ahead. There was also a bloodied scalpel inside. The occupant of the room could be the murderer of Gina. Malfoy and Winnie prepared to find the equipment to read the chip's information, but Malfoy was too injured and needed to rest. He handed the location of the equipment and the chip to Winnie, telling her to go read the data first. Winnie indeed found the scanner. After placing the chip, she entered her own ID number. Meanwhile, Lana found Malfoy and said, "We found the murder weapon in Winnie's room." Winnie looked at the past information with a pained expression. She grabbed a flashlight and smashed the chip. Unexpectedly, this scene was just witnessed by Lana and the others. Winnie couldn't explain herself. She could only open the water reservoir above her and escape. Unexpectedly, Lana quickly took a shortcut and tackled her down. They locked Winnie in the purification room. The spaceship would reach Asia Star in one day. Everyone planned to keep her locked up until they reached their destination. Then they would hand her over to Siren Company for handling. Malfoy hoped to talk to Winnie alone. He pressed her through the glass, asking why she smashed the chip. But Winnie had her reasons that she couldn't express. She simply didn't want to expose her painful past. At this moment, the entire spaceship suddenly shook violently. It turned out that the Origin was approaching the orbit of Asia Star. Thus, the spin was about to stop, and the force field shield was shutting down. A planet very similar to Earth appeared right before them. Everyone finally saw the dawn of victory. In the next moment, a probe flew in. It autonomously docked with the Origin, and emitted a blue beam to perform a scan. Everyone was clueless about what was happening, but information from the control room indicated that the probe had taken control of the Origin, and it showed that alien life forms had been detected. The Protocol 47 was automatically activated. No one understood what this protocol was for. The blue light began to spread from the 9th ring area. Moreover, behind the walls of this area, a misty gas was being sprayed into the room. Colin took out a fire axe and broke open the wall. He discovered that it was filled with gas canisters. It seemed that after the probe detected alien life on board, it was prepared to eliminate all living beings on the Origin. As the 8th ring area began to release toxic gas, Carter suggested killing Winnie, so they could eliminate the alien life forms, and force the ship to stop releasing the toxic gas. After some distress, Sean agreed to this plan, but Malfoy thought Winnie was innocent, so he quietly slipped over to break down the door. Malfoy took Winnie and fled for their lives. Unfortunately, Sean and the others quickly blocked their way. Winnie stepped forward, putting herself in the line of fire. She claimed that she had not been infected. "I destroyed the chip just to erase my past." Sean also had a painful past, so he understood why Winnie made this choice, and he believed her words. At this moment, Colin thought of another testing method. He hurriedly notified Sean to gather everyone. Now everyone was in the first ring area. Colin stated that parasites and hosts maintain a symbiotic relationship. If the host dies, the alien life form will also die. Saline solution can lower body temperature, thus simulating a state of death. If they could induce a death-like state in Winnie, and the toxic gas didn't stop spraying, it would indicate that she was not the infected one. Of course, this method was very dangerous. Winnie could accidentally die for real. However, she willingly accepted the risky test. Winnie quickly lost her heartbeat under Colin's operation, but the ship's toxic gas didn't stop spraying. It seemed she truly was not the infected one. Colin immediately began emergency resuscitation, but there was no response from Winnie's heartbeat. Just when everyone felt hopeless, she miraculously woke up. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and the secret deeply buried by Winnie is when she was 13 years old. She had killed a child who bullied her brother, but even her brother couldn't forgive what Winnie had done. The whole world considered her a monster. That was why Winnie had fled to the origin. A blaring alarm interrupted her thoughts. As the toxic gas was about to spread to the fifth area, Shun thought, since we can't stop the gas from spreading, why not find a way to avoid inhaling it? The fourth ring area had many spare oxygen tanks. They could go there to see if they could find them. Meanwhile, Ray and Casey rushed into the captain's room to search for clues. They found a stellar map of the solar system of Asia Star. Among them was a planet, Iris, which Ray had never heard of. She opened the confidential files on this planet, and discovered that all exploration teams sent there had perished. Moreover, the report emphasized that they had discovered alien life on Iris. Ray accessed the video transmission from the expedition team. He saw scenes of team members dying due to alien creatures. Their deaths were identical to those of the bodies on the origin. This meant that Siren Company knew there were dangers near Asia Star. They deliberately kept this information from everyone, and secretly set up the Protocol 47 for silencing. At the same time, Shun and the others found the oxygen tanks, but the toxic gas was about to spread to the fourth area. Malfoy warned them to evacuate quickly. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly grabbed the oxygen tanks and ran. Unfortunately, Colin inhaled 2 breaths of toxic gas while evacuating too slowly. Fortunately, Shun jammed the door with an oxygen tank, protecting Colin as they left the fourth area. Meanwhile, Winnie suddenly remembered that Carter had gone off alone to sabotage the probe, and he didn't have a communicator on him. Winnie decided to take the risk to save him.
Can't just leave him there.
Yes, we can. It's his dumb idea to go smash up the probe.
He's the one who gave you blood.
Soon after, Shun and the others returned with the oxygen tanks. Colin felt unwell due to inhaling a small amount of toxic gas, so he asked Shun to find an atropine auto-injector at the medical center. Lana followed Shun to go with him. Winnie found Carter. He was sitting despondently inside the probe. Carter had been chopping for a long time, and couldn't even make a dent. Suddenly, the probe activated. The screen displayed that it was about to return to the Asia Star base. The two were relieved that they could take everyone with them, but they discovered the probe had a weight limit of 150 kilograms. Carter immediately suggested, "How about we leave first?" Winnie certainly would not agree. In desperation, Carter had to follow her back to the first ring area. The two informed everyone about the situation. Before they could decide who should leave first, Shun suddenly discovered a photo of Tyler with his brother beside his body. The back of the photo had the name of the boy, Sam, written on it. This seemed to trigger a memory in Shun. He asked Lana to take the injector to save Colin first. He went to Tyler's room and opened Tyler's flight log. Tyler talked about the house in his hometown, and his memories with his brother Sam. Their memories of jumping into the lake to swim. This was clearly the story Lana had told when she was trapped. Shun accidentally bumped into a recorder, and inside, Lana's voice came out. Before Shun could react, the person involved appeared behind him. It turned out that York had indeed escaped through the skylight. He crawled through the ventilation ducts to the swimming pool. York ambushed Lana while she was swimming, and spat the parasite into her mouth. Since then, the infected Lana had been hiding in the shadows, watching and listening, and waiting for the opportunity to sabotage the brain scanner. After she moved into Tyler's crew cabin, she accidentally found a recorder, so she began to record her daily life with her voice. It could sense some of the host Lana's memories and emotions, even unconsciously wanting to understand humanity. When the infected one, posing as Lana, was trapped in the 10th ring area, Shun kept her company, chatting with her. He even asked Lana about her childhood stories, trying to help her divert her attention. But the alien life form had no idea about the host's childhood memories. It could only recite Tyler's flight log. She said her hometown was by the lake, and she had a younger brother named Sam. Unbeknownst to them, this conversation laid the groundwork for danger. After the infected one was rescued, she began to crave the feeling of being close to Shun. It wanted to live as a human. So when Gina thought of a way to conduct the test, the infected one used a scalpel to stab her to death. Afterward, it fled in a hurry and nearly ran into Winnie. She could only throw the murder weapon into the other person's room to frame them. That night, the infected can't sleep. She could only go to Shun, hoping he would take her in for the night. An alien life form had fallen in love with a human. Unfortunately, when Shun saw the photo of the Tyler brothers, he immediately realized that Lana had deceived him. Now the two were engaged in a deadly struggle. Their fighting abilities were evenly matched. In the end, the infected one had the upper hand. She quickly grabbed the weapon off the ground.
I'm not what you think.
You're not human.
The infected one handed the gun to Shun. She couldn't bring herself to pull the trigger. And Shun also didn't shoot. He simply knocked the infected one out with the butt of the gun. At this moment, the communicator rang. Casey informed Shun about the probe, telling him to take Lana away first. Hearing this, Shun carried the infected one into the probe. Once it detached from the origin, the toxic gas immediately stopped spreading. Everyone guessed that either Lana or Shun was the infected one. Now that the crisis was averted, everyone could safely head to Asia Star. Unfortunately, Colin coughed up blood. The toxic gas inside him ultimately killed him. Shun watched the probe leave through the window. The infected one knelt on the ground, shedding tears. Suddenly, the probe emitted a voice recording.
Please, if anyone can hear me, don't land on here.
This season's story ends here. Japanese mixed-race male model Sen Mitsuji is quite suitable for science fiction themes. His portrayal of Shun was also quite remarkable. The suspense and monster elements complemented the plot well. Each character was uniquely shaped and successfully portrayed. Of course, there were also significant logical flaws. For example, the large spaceship had no surveillance. The medical standards were also significantly behind. The overall technological setting, in such a confined space on a spaceship, along with the setting of mysterious creatures, it feels like a cliché. Moreover, it's clear that the production team had insufficient funding. Therefore, the monster designs were overly simplistic. The main focus was on the survivors' mutual suspicion and the moral dilemmas of humanity. Overall, it was still worth watching. If you like my channel, please click subscribe.